Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight on our third workshop on empowering change from social media to local media. And tonight is working with our local media. Before we start, just want to acknowledge that the work we do supports volunteers across Turtle Island, and they live on and reside on many First Nations, Inuit, and traditional territories across this wonderful continent. And we will be returning back to the land acknowledgement shortly. So, like I said, it's the third workshop. Tonight is being a local spokesperson, amplifying your voice in local media. By the end of tonight, I hope you will have a better understanding of the importance of being a local spokesperson, how to make a pitch to your local media, how to prepare for and participate in a media interview. And in this workshop, we are focusing on our local newspapers, our local radio, and our local TV. The agenda tonight, first we will set the stage, and I'm going to review land acknowledgements and working with media, like use that as a context, and then ask you the question, why work with our local media? And then we'll describe how to pitch an interview through a media release for an event. And I have a real event that's coming up that I'm going to show you. And then we're going to practice giving an interview. So for these last 2 weeks, we've been going through looking at the various media and relating them back to land acknowledgements. And we distilled a land acknowledgement into three things that they're trying to get across. First of all, to diminish and like smash the doctrine of discovery. There were people here first, to get us on that journey, keep pushing us forward on our truth and reconciliation journey, and continue that relationship building and the accountability. And we came to the conclusion that on doctrine discovery, truth and reconciliation, and relationship and accountability, Meta and Twitter totally fail. They think they own a space that should belong to everybody. They're full of lies. They're full of polarization. It's driving us apart. And there's no accountability. So they failed, and failed. In comparison, we gave Blue Sky a pass. And now I'd just like to focus on local news in comparison to Blue Sky, Meta, and Twitter. So on the doctrine of discovery, like I believe our local media, at least in my experience here in Sudbury, that they do take their job a lot seriously, and they don't pretend that they they own everything, so even less so. So there's I don't know, I think they're a little bit better than Blue Sky and Twitter. There just seems to be more something better there. On truth and reconciliation, because I can phone or email or reach out to my local media, I find them to be totally accountable to us, and also because a lot of them are regulated, especially the TV and radio, are regulated under the CRTC, and they are regulated and they are accountable to us, and it's a lot easier to get through to our local media, compared to Blue Sky, and especially compared to Meta and Twitter if you've ever tried to form a complaint. So although I don't give them a perfect, I find them to be a little bit better on uh, on being good about the various tenets of our land acknowledgements. So that's one reason why I like to work with local news, is because they just are doing a better job of like really connecting us and being accountable for it. But I wanted to ask this question now. Why work with local media other than the fact it's essential to a healthy democracy? So we all know, especially Twitter and the Meta platforms, it's rampant disinformation on there, and the social media moguls are not accountable. But the Canadian press is more so. Um, but why else should we want to be working with our local media? So that's my question to you. I'm going to give you a minute to shout out any answers, and then I'll give you my answers. So Why should we be working with our local media? And there's no wrong answer. Because we are here. Yes. Yeah. Because, yes. Okay. Any others?
Heard the phrase "all politics is local." I don't really know what it means actually, but I think it starts here.
Yes, it does start here. And our politicians really pay attention to what is in the local media. If you get printed, you get noticed. And they get anything else?
A
lot of what
not,
we're looking for is often broad social responses to challenges. And so we have to talk to our local people because they might not be aware of the broad social challenges or the solutions to them.
Yeah, okay, so that's great. It's a potential, yes, we need to reach out to more. Most of my husband's friends are not in social media, folks. They're not.
um,
Okay, go ahead. So it allows you to reach a lot more people. Andy?
I'm having trouble with phrasing this exactly, but I think the answer has something to do with professionalism. The media are run by professionals, whereas social media is an amateur free-for-all where people are not accountable.
Yep. Yep. It's yeah, and Felipe has a good, that's a really good point, Andy. Did someone, and then I'll read Felipe's, but anybody else?
It strikes me that often the local media is looking for content, local content.
Oh yeah, you're the story. You are the story. You definitely, definitely. And Felipe, yeah, journalism is experiencing difficulties. Um, but a lot of it's a really complex thing that's happening. Yes, they have failed us, but I want you to know that we lobbied the Toronto Star 3 times. We lobbied the Globe and Mail twice. We hammered the National Post and all the post media newspapers repeatedly with our carbon pricing message. And by 2015, they all endorsed a carbon tax with a rebate. So if you can reach out to them, there are channels to get to them. Yes, there are aspects that they are failing, but in comparison to social media, they're angels. I mean, they may feel like devils sometimes, but in comparison, they're angels. So that's a really good point, and I do agree with you that they are failing us sometimes.
No, but what I meant there is not failing us, but the industry as a whole. If it
Oh,
fails, then it means more social media. So
oh.
less accountability, all of that.
Oh, even better, even better. Oh, exactly. We need to be supporting them because if they fail, like they're a pillar of democracy. So 100%. Oh, even better answer. Sorry, I read that wrong. I'm so glad you verbalized that. You said that way better. Excellent. So that got it going. So here's my answers. Like Lynn said, we need to educate the general public about the urgency of the crisis and the factual evidence. And we need to get them generate that public interest on, climate crisis, carbon pricing, and our own organization. And I'm speaking of this from a CCL's perspective. So whatever group that you belong to, of course, you want to be highlighting the work you're doing. And it's disseminate our information to the largest number of people possible. And like was mentioned, unlike social media, that they are accountable curators of public information and they can reach a lot more people. And being interviewed validates your work. Anybody can post something on social media. Getting an interview is like a gold star. Remember those in kindergarten? You get the gold star and you get interviewed. And as Bob said, they're looking for local content. All of you are local heroes. I look at the work you're doing and I'm like, oh, get them in the media. You guys are so amazing. So your hero stories are really important for generating political will for a livable world. So yeah, that's why we want to work with them. So how to make a media pitch? You got to know who to contact. So you got to get that contact information. You got to get your timing right. you know, you send out something 2 weeks before an event, or at least a week and a half before an event, and then you got to remind them. Or if something really important's happened, like with the Charlie Angus putting out that thing about Elon Musk, and then a day later we got a media release out, you know, you got to get really, you know, on top of news really fast. You have to identify your news hooks. You got to try to get media, you know, to want you to be to want to cover your work. You got to humanize your work. You tie it into other things, and then you make your contact. And what is news? Like I said, it's timely. It's happening right now, or something timely is about to happen. It can be something big is about to happen, like those big climate strikes, or a big weather event, or something of prominence is happening, or something unusual is happening. There can be conflict or drama. It could be something happening really locally. Oh, I said drama twice. You could have really important analysis like the IPCC, or you could be giving them something visually beautiful to be looking at. So we've got, you know, what is news. And so now I'm going to go over to a media release that I just wrote, just to show you what I mean. So here in Sudbury, our local Fridays for Future Youth have uncovered that on Friday, March 7th, there's an International Day of Action to sign up for science. So they wrote a media release that said exactly what they were doing, super simple, where it's going to be, when, and then who, and then they gave the reasons why. And there's lots of hooks in here. So they're going back in history. This is something local. They're saying something that they've said for 7 years straight. They want to tell scientists around Canada that we support you and we recognize the critical role that science plays in shaping our future. And then we're supporting them. So we've written, you know, that when science is politicized or ignored, societies lose their capacity to solve pressing issues effectively. In this spirit, we stand with our local Fridays for Future Youth who continue to demonstrate remarkable insight and leadership beyond their years. So this is a typical media release to get somebody to an event. We've got all sorts of hooks in here. There's something happening internationally. These Fridays for Future Kids, the media loves them. They always offer them something visual. And there's something happening globally, and we'll have more numbers for them as they get closer to the event. So that's just, you know, showing you, you know, they've ticked off a whole bunch of these boxes. Oh, and they're doing it in front of Science North, Canada's largest science museum as well. So that's what we've got going. And that's a typical media release to get somebody out to an event. I didn't do a media release about responding to something because that would be for another day. This is more about getting people out to an event and becoming that local spokesperson. So then you have to prepare for the interviews. So the next parts that we'll be doing with the youth, and they become professionals at this because we've been doing media training with them since they were 10 years old. That's how long they've been doing this work. They've been doing stuff since prior to Fridays for Future. And so we get them to come up with what is that one thing you want to say to the media, and they'll come up with a memorable soundbite, and it's usually way better than anything I could ever written. And then there are key messages that we want to get across, and then we want to make sure that they know that to leave a lasting impression. So this is how you prepare for a media interview. Think of your memorables, your sound bites, the face, the body is the key messages, and no more than 3 messages, and then the footprints, the lasting impressions. So it's divided into those 3 parts. So here's part 1. You want to have feelings, compassion, emotion. You want analysis, like amazing statistics. You want it to be compelling, and you want energy. So you want the media to feel that something is coming. And I'm just giving examples here, but you try to get all 4 of these things activated when you write a media release. And then as you're giving your interview, you want to keep your message simple and save the science and the economics for questions and answers. Always work in rules of 3s, like no more than 3 things that you're trying to get across, and stick to your top 3 points, and then know your audience and ask yourself, if you're lucky enough to still have a mom, does it pass the mom test? And overall, just don't overwhelm the reporter. Just no matter what, just try to get across your 3 points. That's what a politician does. So you just got to learn to do that. And then in the footprint, you want to make sure you leave a lasting impression. You want the media to keep coming back to you. So make sure you're able to, wrap it all up, put it in a nutshell. Less is more. Don't overwhelm the reporter, and make the reporter curious to want more and another story down the road. And be sure to follow it up with a personal thank you via email, paper, or social media. And practice your take-home message and try to get it in under 8 seconds. And I'm going to say this twice: never tell a reporter what to write. That's the big no-no. I'm going to say it again. So this part I'm going to skip over. That's why it's in different colors. But be sure to take these notes when you're dealing with the media, and you will have the slides, and this will be on our website as well. I just don't have the time to go through it. Okay. All right, so when talking to the media, listen carefully to the questions. Don't be afraid to pause before you answer. Make eye contact, or if they're telling you to, especially when you're getting a TV interview, they'll actually tell you to look at them and not the camera. It works better because it looks like you're talking at somebody anyways. Speak clearly and slowly and in sentences, and pause between sentences, because sometimes you will say something so brilliant, and if you leave a pause, they can capture it. They can cut it out. Learn your control phrases, like you could say, instead of saying like I just said, you could say, well, that's a great question, or oh, I haven't thought about that, or well, that's interesting. So as you're trying to get your thoughts together, you learn these control phrases. And also smile when talking, especially if it's a radio interview. This is a trick I learned from Catherine Hayhoe. When you smile when you're talking, people can hear you smile. If you are giving an interview, don't slouch and rock back and forth. Don't use acronyms or jargon. Don't repeat a damaging phrase. Don't speak for anyone else but yourself. And again, don't tell the media what to what the reporter to say. Tips for media interviews: stay in control by bridging, using control phrases to get an interview question back on track or back on message. So you can say something like, that's a great question, but have you ever thought about this? And then go off on that tangent that you got to go on. Or that's a great question, or you can say, anyways, there's all sorts of bridging questions. And don't ever be afraid to say no. Guess what? We're not experts, but never say the word no comment, because that sounds too secretive. And practice your talking points. So read over your media release over and over again until you get it. So here are some media specific guidelines. I love newspaper interviews because I can bring all my support materials and I can lay them out in front of me, or if it's over the phone, I just have it all around me. But always behave for any interview as the microphone is always on, always on. Don't say anything off the record. For telephone interviews, find out if the segment's going to be lived or taped. And eliminate distractions in the room where you're taking a call. So Mark, you can't have Sunny in the room with you. That's his cat. Television interviews, dress the part. So avoid shiny or tiny print clothing, and solids work best. And by dress the part, I mean, if you want to come across as professional, then wear your suit. But if you want to look like a casual hippie person and it's part of what you're doing, then by all means do that. You just don't look sloppy, just look well kept. And for radio interviews, paint pictures with your words, sound confident and control, and again, smile. People can hear you smile. And control fidgety sounds. I once had a table that shook, and I used to have my computer on it, and it would make whatever. Don't do that. So make sure there's no fidgety sounds around you. This is way more detail. You can come back to it. And, I used to read this over and over again before I would get ready for an interview. But now I just, memorize the name of the person. But this is a lot of details. Just you know, when you have time, just look it over more in detail, especially when you're getting ready for an interview. So now we're going to practice an interview. So I need somebody to interview me about my event that the kids are going to be having on March the 7th. So you're just going to ask me 4 questions, and Mark, I think I'm going to lean into you if that's okay. You're going to ask me, what is my name? What is the event about? Who will be there, and why do you think it's important? Okay. And then that's pretty much how an interview goes for an event. Are you okay to do that, Mark? Okay.
Start off whenever.
Yeah, whatever. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
Yeah, no
Okay,
worries.
great.
Hi, welcome to the 6 o'clock news. Who am I speaking with today?
My name is Kathy Orlando, and I'm with the organization Citizens Climate Lobby in Greater Sudbury.
Well, thanks for coming on the show today. What is this event about? I see a lot of people milling about behind you.
Okay, so it's happening today is a Stand Up for Science event, and it's happening all around the world, but especially in the United States, in response to all the cuts to science by Donald Trump in the United States, and countries such as France and the Netherlands have joined on to this. And because it's the middle of winter and it's really difficult to get Canadians out, we decided we would just do our own event. The kids decided that they would just do their own event here in front of Canada's now largest science museum, because the science museum in Toronto was closed, that we would stand in solidarity for an hour today alongside all the scientists in the United States and France and the Netherlands to stand up for science.
That's amazing. Who all is attending this event?
We have the Fridays for Future Youth, and we have a couple scientists from the university.
And why would you say this event is important?
Well, Citizens Climate Lobby, our solution to the climate crisis is democracy, and one of the pillars of democracy is science, and it's under threat. So we got to stand up for it. And you can ask Sophia, but you know, these Fridays for Future Youth have been striking for the climate for 7.5 years, and their message consistently has been listen to the experts and cooperate. So we stand in solidarity with these wise young people. Right? You know your stuff, right? You know, that's pulled right out of the media release. That's all you do. You're passionate about what you're doing. You worked really hard on an event. You know, we've been working on this event for 3 weeks, so it's in my head. Not 3 weeks, 2 weeks. So it's in my head. So when you're doing an event, that's it. You just try to get across what's in the media release, and that was all there. So that's what it looks like. So does anybody have an upcoming event that they know? Ugh, I, yeah. Do you want me to tell you my big fail once? It was kind of funny. I was at a city hall, and I had to give a 5-minute speech to stop the stripping of soil in our community on the farmland. Okay. And I practiced my speech so much. I got it down to every breath like a singer, you know, like I knew exactly when I needed to breathe in order to get it across in 5 minutes. I knew when to be funny. And I was just like, I practiced it and practiced it and practiced it. I open up my newspaper the next day, and there's my picture in the front of the Sudbury Star. And Kathy Orlando wants the city to stop stripping. I'm like, oh dear no. So you can't control the message sometimes, but boy, did I get a lot of attention. My first time on the cover of the paper. So yes, the media will have fun with you too. They've done a lot of zingers to me, but that one was really good. I was like, oh, touche, Brian. So
But you got good attention.
I I did get good attention. Everybody read that article.
Well, then that's no fail.
That's no fail. That's right. It was but it felt like it was like I just I'm a former newspaper girl, and then this thing lands on my front porch, and I'm like, oh my goodness, no, like it was a joke. They got me a few other times, so they will have fun with you, especially if you develop relationships with you. And your local media needs you and your story. And I hope I've given you some inspiration, and I have coached many a person to give live media interviews. And lastly, I remember my first one. I was trained by Al Gore in 2008, and I come from a city that's full of environmental heroes, Sudbury, and I was just shocked that I was chosen. And so the local CBC wanted to do a radio interview with me, and I'd never done a live radio interview. And a man by the name of Mike Nagy was also being trained, and he used to run for the Green Party in Guelph. And Mike was at my table at the training. I said, Mike, I don't know how to give an interview. He gave me like a 5-minute how to give an interview, and I crushed the interview. I mean, you just go in with your 3 points, and no matter what, get those 3 points across. If you're passionate about what you're doing, just go for it. You're the story. They need you more than you need them. And you're all heroes. So thank you. Bravo. Any questions? I would love to see you all in the media, and I'd be honored to help you.
Well, I'll call on you
Thank you,
when the
Bob.
time comes.
It'd be so awesome to have something coming out of Saskatoon. It's so like there. Yeah, you're all, people are watching you. They are watching you, and you'll just have a much bigger audience watching you. And I know that's overwhelming. It can feel overwhelming, but it's also magical, and your ancestors will thank you someday.
This is really wonderful and helpful, Kathy. Thank you for this. And Mark and Jim, what do you folks say we make something happen here in Calgary?
100% behind you.
Okay, let's talk about that at our next meeting.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Okay.
Kathy,
Gotta-
can you
Gotta go practice.
say something about if you have something negative to say about what's happening in your community, how to phrase that?
Yeah, like I was trying to stop soil stripping in my community. Just that's where you really drill down into the numbers, Lynn. And then maybe to try to also put a personal story in there as well. So when I gave my speech about, to stop soil stripping, I also included that I made it personal. I said my father-in-law was an IPCC scientist, and his area of specialty was soil biochemistry, and and the climate. And I know that soil is really important. So that bringing that personal with the factual, really important. And my rule of thumb is we just have to be good. We don't have to be nice, and that really guides me.
I wonder if you couldn't use a version in that instance, say of a truth sandwich.
Yep, truth sandwich is a great idea, Jim. Absolutely. Or using the How to Win Friends and Influence People Carnegie School of making friends, right? You say something really positive, and then you just like couch it in the polite Canadian way. And I have this concern, however, about this one little thing, and then go, but I know as a community we can, work through this, Very good point, Jim.
I've also found that people really respond to stories. If you can tell them a story, particularly one in which you're involved, maybe not a personal story, but one in which you've been involved. And people like that. They respond well to it.
Yes, stories are what wins the hearts of most people. I know I like facts, but and I bet you all do too, because you see the facts and you go, oh, I gotta act on the climate crisis. But for the rest of humanity, it's the stories. Any other wise advice? Well, that's it.
I was sorry. Oops, I'm in the dark here. You've mostly talked about individuals speaking to the media, but we're a group, and so we always have to have we do a lot of speaking notes and stuff like that. And so when the media contacts any one of our members, we tend to go on Slack and say, so I've been asked to talk about the new Presto readers. What's our stake? And so we have a Google Docs document where we have speaking notes on specific issues so that we're all consistent. And that's been a real challenge for us, because it's really easy to get misquoted, and it's really easy to sort of skew what we're saying sometimes. So I mean, all these points are really good, but that's been the challenge for us, is making sure that our group speaks with one voice.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a group to speak with one voice. Our rule of thumb for our volunteers at Citizens Climate Lobby is our talking points are only to be found in the laser talks and in the media, in the official media releases, and that they only can ever speak on their own behalf. Even for the most part, I I try not to speak on all of CCL Canada's behalf in the media unless I know it's fully our talking points. So I know so even here at CCL Canada, we don't share the talking points in a community, like the communal leadership. Yeah. But I hear you.
Oh, that's interesting, because we do the opposite. So we say, the Ottawa Transit Riders has this position. This is our argument. So, I mean, we can have lots of us talk about our personal experience, but we have a position.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they would know the position if it's officially in the laser talks, then I'm sure they would be fine to talk towards it. But as soon as it's going to deviate, then yeah. Like somebody
But I'm
says,
good
so
at
what's
it.
your position on nuclear? It's like, oh, whatever. As soon as it gets a little bit out of our wheelhouse. Yep. And way to go with the Toronto Ottawa Transit Riders.
But that's a good example, Kathy. What about nuclear? Like, we don't want to talk about it. So how do you say you really don't want to talk about it?
So I've been at events where that's been asked. And I'd be like, that's not what this event is about. The event is about this. So I would pivot. Okay.
Right.
And then
We're,
when
come back to the subject of what you're of the interview or the talk or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so pivot. And then if you're wondering what CCL's position is on nuclear, it's we don't take a stand for or against. Either the economics will make sense or not. And we don't have the bandwidth to help like a couple thousand volunteers, drill down into every single policy issue. So we just don't go there, because otherwise we never get anything done. It takes so much work just to get people to understand how to get money away from fossil fuels. So yeah. Okay, this has been fantastic. I'm going to stop recording.